Hello everyone, I hope you are all doing good and keeping yourself safe. Today we are going to discuss about or learn about how we can work with raw images and typography. So let us start with the first topic, that is raw images. So what are actually a raw image? So a camera raw image file that you take it from the picture from the camera contains minimum processed data from the image sensor of either a digital camera or motion picture film scanner or any other image scanner. So raw files are named so because they are not yet processed and therefore are not ready to be printed or edited with bitmap graphics editors such as Adobe Photoshop. So normally the image is processed by a raw converter in a wide gamut internal color space where precise adjustments can be made before conversion to a positive film file format such as TIFF or JPEG for storage, printing or further manipulation on the image. So there are dozens of raw formats in use by different manufacturers for digital image capturing equipment. So like normally you have seen the extension of the raw image file with mostly DCR, DNG and sometime SR2 and so on. So we'll discuss that later on. So raw image files are sometimes incorrectly described as digital negative, but neither are the negatives nor do the unprocessed files constitute visible images. Rather, the raw data sets are more likely to be exposed but undeveloped film, which can be converted. When we talk about this thing, it is called as electronically developed in a non-destructive manner. So multiple times in an observable reversible steps to reach a visual desired image. So we are going to look at what we meant by undestructible manner later on when we are going to do the conversion and do the working on the raw image file. Like undeveloped photographic film, a raw digital image may have a wider dynamic range or color gamut that the developed film or print. Unlike physical film, after development, the raw file preserves the information captured at the time of exposure. The purpose of raw image format is to save with minimum loss of information data obtained from the sensor. Raw image formats are intended to capture the radiometric characteristics of the scene, that is, physical information about light, intensity, and color of the scene. At the best of the camera sensor performance, most raw image file formats stored information sensed according to the geometric of the sensors. Individual photo recept elements, as we call it as pixels, rather than points in the expected final image. Sensor with hexagonal element displacement, for example, record information for each of either hexagonally displayed cells, which is decoded in the software, will eventually transform into a rectangular geometry during digital development. So when we talk about the file contents, raw file contain the information required to produce a viewable image for the camera sensor data. So there are different structures for the raw files, often following a common pattern. Okay, so byte ordering is there, metadata is there, and thumbnails are there, time coding, file sequences, frame sequencing are there. So there are different methods, different ways to encode the contents within the raw files. So as we talk about different file formats, like Kodak uses DCR, K25 or KDC formats. Similarly, Canon is using CR2, CR3 or CRW formats. Epson use ERF. Nikon uses NEF, NRW. Panasonic uses RW2. Sony uses ARW, SRF or SR2 formats. So depending upon your uh, hardware or the equipment, it depends. Okay, so you will find different variety of cameras, different companies having different formats of storing the raw file. There's another format that is called DNG. The Adobe Digital Negative Format is an extension of TIFF 6.0 format, and it is compatible with TIFF or EP and uses various open format or standards like metadata, XMP metadata, ICC profile, XYZ coordinates, and so on. So depending upon different hardware, it also varies. So let us start with our work. So we have discussed about what are raw images. So you have to open your Adobe Creative Cloud. Okay, then you open Photoshop. So it will take time depending upon the power of your computer. Okay, so I have already one DNG format, that is Adobe Digital Negative format. So I'm going to open that one. Excuse me. Okay, so you can download from the internet some raw images to work your way. Okay, so now if you look at over here, it says camera raw version. This is the Adobe camera raw encoder that is already available. Okay, so this is the picture. Okay, so this is a DNG format. So you will able to see the different histogram that is available. Okay, so exposure, tint, shadows, and so on. Okay, so you can use different options like white balance. Okay, so I'm using, for example, what is has been explained as a shot. Then you can have using the features of temperature, tint, and so on. Okay, so as we were talking about digitally, when we are talking about digital images, destructive and non-destructive. Okay, so for example, if I do any changes over here and I'm going to open an image, that means I am destructing the information, because when you're converting the raw image into an Photoshop, then that means all the information will be lost, whatever this picture is having inside the raw information, so that will be lost. So that is a destructive manner. So first, for example, if I want to increase the temperature, okay, so if I increase the temperature, so you can see that it gives me an idea that okay, this has been taken into a daylight, so it gives you a warmer feeling. If I want to change the white balance, for example, daylight, for example, okay, so or cloudy, so depending upon that, those filter will be put on those image. And if I open the image, that means I am destructing the image, so all that information will be there, so I cannot revert back to the original state. So in order to avoid those kind of things, there are different features. For example, if I put the exposure, so you can see at the background all the cloud information has been lost. So depending upon the exposure or the information that you want, you can use those information. Like for example, if I can make the contrast lower, so you have different effect on the image. Same as different, you can try out like how you want the image, so it give you more effect of the daylight. Okay, so if I click on this button open image, so all the raw information that has been stored from the sensors of the camera will be lost. So I have to work on this image, so this will be the image. So this is a destructive manner, though you can use it, but you are destructing the original image. So there is another flow that you can use using Adobe Photoshop. Okay, so how we can do that? For example, if this is the option at the bottom, you will see Adobe RGB 1998 8-bit 6000, so many information is there. Okay, so here you can utilize different manners or color space, like for example Adobe RGB 1990, or you can use color match. So it gives you wide range of colors to play with your image. Then I want, rather than from 8-bit channel, I want 16-bit channel. Okay, so for example, if I click that, so different settings will be coming over here. Okay, but there is an other important feature that you can use while using this Photoshop Camera Raw, is open in Photoshop as smart object. Okay, so this is a very important feature that you can use. Like for example, if you want to use a picture and you don't want to do a destructive manner, so you can use this option as open in Photoshop as a smart object. So when you click on that, you will see that you will have an open object option coming here. So that means you have choose a right selection. So for example, if I uncheck this one, so here it will show open image. Okay, when I click on here, I can see it will say open object. So that means you have chosen the correct workflow. The reason of choosing this as a smart object is you can do whatever you want to do on the image, but the actual information will not be lost. So this will be an undestructive manner. If you open the image, that means you are doing it in the destructive manner. So depending upon your preferences, make it as a habit that you use these options in order to do that. Okay, so let us see when we click on open object what will actually happen. Okay, so you will see that reading camera raw format, and it will be opening in Adobe Photoshop. So it's taking time. Okay, so now it is open. Okay, so as we were talking about the non-destructive manner, so if you have used an open image feature, so here you will able to see the image rather than the smart object. So then this image, you have to work with this image, and you can do whatever filter or things that you have done. So all the raw information that was previously available over there will be lost. Okay, so let me remove this timeline first. Okay, so when you are using the smart object, you will see a thumbnail, and this is the smart object. Okay, so in the previous, if you have used an open image, you can have to apply filters over here and whatever depending upon your nature to portray of the picture you want to do, you can do that. But when you are using with the smart object, it is a good way to do that. You can double click on this image, and you can come up on the raw image. Okay, so here for example I can go to different settings, for example as short. Okay, so I want to increase the temperature. For example, it looks like it is having a warmer temperature over there, so I can select this thing and I will get the image as per my requirement. Because the purpose of having a smart object, it's a good idea that we can have multiple things can be done on the image rather than destroying the actual image. Okay, so depending upon your requirements, you can work differently. Okay, so I just make this copy. For example, if I want to do some image healing tool or spot healing tool, you can work on these images. Okay, so that is how you play with the raw image formats using Photoshop. Now you can save it in the PSD format, so you can change whatever you want to later on if you want to do some filtering and so on. So you can save this file. Okay, so we can save the file, or you can save as Adobe PSD format. So what happened is I save the file over here, and what will happen, the actual file will be replaced with this one, so all the things will be lost. So it is always better that you make a copy and work on the image, so all the actual raw information will not be lost. Okay. Okay, so the next topic for today is typography. So what is typography? Typography is the art and technique of arranging type to make written language legible, readable, and appealing when displayed. So the arrangement of type involves selecting typeface, point sizes, line lengths, line spacing, also called as leading, and letter spacing, that is called tracking, and adjustment the space between the pairs of letters, that is called kerning. And the typography is also applied to the style, arrangement, and appearance of these letters, numbers, symbols created by the process. So type design is a closely related craft, sometimes considered part of typography. So most typographers do not design typefaces, and sometimes some type designers do not consider themselves typographers. So typography may also be used as a decorative device unrelated to communication or information. Okay, so this is the basic definition of the typography. So let us start with the first thing is typeface. Okay, so when we talk about the typeface, is a collection of letters. While each letter is unique, certain shapes are shared across letters. A typeface represents shared pattern across a collection of letters. Typefaces that are selected for their style, legibility, and readability are most effective when following the fundamental principle of typographic design. So there is an example of, like for example, name of the letter form, parts, aperture, ascenders, baseline, cap height. Okay, so we have descenders leading, letter spacing, sans serif, stem, stroke, and excite. So we are talking about when we are having this. So this is serif having the edges. Sometimes you use sans serif without any. When you have these kind of a special line going out or coming in from the letter, we call it serif. And no kind of things are called sans serif. Sans means in French no. Okay, so what is a baseline? So when we talk about the baseline, is the invisible line upon which a line of text rests. Okay, the baseline is the invisible line upon which a line of text rests. In material design, the baseline is an important specification in measuring the vertical distance between text and the element. Okay, so for that we can use different dp pixels. Okay, so if you look at the 40 dp pixels, so this is from the baseline. You can check the dp, and based on that you can, regardless of the point size, a text baseline must sit on the 4 dp grid. Line height must be a value divisible by 4 to maintain the grid. So this is an important rule. Okay, so then we come to the measurement from the baseline. So specific distance from the user or UI element from the baseline. Baseline values are software agnostics. So they work in a design program and work with the grid on Android or iOS or any other devices. So the code can be translated from baseline relative specifications into padding. For the web, automated the calculation using SAS or CSS or any other mechanism that they are having. So this is the first picture is talking about referencing baseline from vertical alignment. And here we are talking about with components. So depending upon the thing that you are going to create, you have to think about those measurements before coming to the actual implementation. So either you are going to do the vertical or with the reference of vertical components or with reference to the relation of the components. So depending upon that you do the typography for that. Then we have the cap height. Cap height refers to the height of a typeface flat capital letters such as M or I measured from the baseline. Okay, so round and pointed capital letters such as S and A are optical adjusted by being drawn into a slight overshoot above the cap height to achieve the effect of being the same size. Every typeface has a unique cap height, so depending upon that you have to choose which font type you are going to use. Then we have X height. X height refers to the height of the lowercase x over here for a typeface, and it indicates how tall or short each glyph in a typeface will be. Typefaces with tall X heights have better legibility and small font size, as the white space within each letter is more legible or more readable. Then we have ascender and descender lines. Ascenders are the upward vertical stroke found in certain lowercase letters that extend beyond either the cap height or baseline. Descenders are the downward vertical stroke in the letters. In some cases, a collision between the stroke can occur when the line height or the vertical distance between baseline is too high. So what are weights then? Weights refer to the relative thickness of the font stroke. A typeface can come in many weights, and 4 to 6 weight is a typical number available for a typeface. So if you look at number 1 is light, then we have regular, medium and bold. So we come to those classification. Okay, so for example, when we are talking about serif, okay, so old style serif. Okay, first we talk about the serif. A serif is a small shape or projection that appears at the beginning or end of the stroke of a letter. Typefaces with serifs are called serif typefaces. Serif fonts are classified in different other categories. One is called old style serif, low contrast between thick and thin strokes, diagonal stress in the stroke, slanted serif on lower case ascenders. Then we have transitional serif, high contrast between thick and thin strokes, medium high X height, vertical stress in the stroke, and bracketed serif. Then we have Didone or neoclassical serif, very high contrast, okay, between thick and thin strokes, vertical stress in the strokes, and ball terminal strokes. Then we have slab serif, heavy serif with imperceptible differences between the stroke weights, minimal and no bracketing. So depending upon those things, you can use the different fonts and to make the complement from each other. Then we have geo a typeface without serif is called a sans serif typeface. From the French word sans means without. Sans serif can be classified as juristicule, low contrast between thick and thin strokes, vertical and no observable stress, humanist, medium contrast between thick and thin strokes, and slanted stress. Then geometric, low contrast between thick and thin strokes with vertical stress and circular round form. Then we have monospace. So monospace typeface display all character with the same width. So roboto mono, that means monospace. Okay, then we have space mono. This is this way. Then we have VT323 monospace. Then we come to other font faces types that are handwritten. So handwritten are unconventional with natural handwritten feel. These typically are used as from heading 1 to heading 6 in your type scale. They come in the following forms that we can refer to as black letter, script and handwritten. Okay, so this is known as very famous dancing script, indie flower, and this is Unifracotomagnetia. Okay, so sorry about my pronunciation. So you can see the difference between the characters. Then we have display a miscellaneous category for all classification types that are not suitable for use of large font sizes. So those are like shrink, had, chewy and fast one. So the thing that we have to cater is the readability. While legibility is determined by the character in a typeface, readability refers to how easy it is to read words or block of text, which is affected by the style of a type face. Okay, so first we have letter spacing. Okay, so letter spacing, also called tracking, refers to the uniform adjustment of the space between letter in a piece of text. The larger typeset, okay, larger type sizes such as headline use tighter letter spacing to improve readability and reduce space between letters. Okay, so previously one was a tighter letter spacing. For a smaller type size, looser letter spacing can improve readability as more space between the letters, increasing contrast between each letter shape. Text in all caps, even at small type sizes, have improved readability because of its added letter spacing. Then we have tabular. Okay, so using tabular figures so known as monospace numbers rather than proportional digits in tables or places where values may change often. So you can have tabular figure keeping values optically aligned for better spacing. So monospace proportional wise, so you can see the difference how it will look like depending upon the nature of the work that you are doing. Then we have line length. Line lengths for body text are usually between 40 to 60 characters. In areas with wider line lengths such as desktop, longer lines that contain up to 120 characters will need an increased line length from 20 space to 24 spacing. So the ideal line length is about 40 to 60 characters per line for English body text. Then we come to line height. Line height, also known as leading, controls the amount of space between base lines in a body block of text. A text line height is proportional to its type size. So for example, the type size is 14, so line height should be roughly around 20 dp. Type size 20 will be having line height of 28 dp. Then we come to paragraph spacing. Okay, so keeping paragraph spacing in a range between 0.75 or 1.25 of the type sizes. Okay, so typically the type size 20 spacing, line height 30 dp, paragraph spacing 28 dp will be an appropriate use for better readability. Then we come to the last portion, that is alignment. So we already know left aligned, right aligned, centered. Okay, so this one is left aligned. Okay, so right aligned will be having same impact. So it is always better to use the fonts that are complementing each other, emphasizing what the reader should be reading it first, and then you can have the hierarchical view, so making bold or bigger font size are readable first, then smaller are readable second, and so on. So it gives more depth and readability to your text. So depending upon, like sans serif or serif are mostly used in magazines when we talk about Time New Roman and others. So you just go through an experiment which is much better and better for your design. So I hope you learned something new today and enjoyed the session. Thank you. Thanks very much.